Hello, I am Gareth Thomas here with Tackle HIV, and I'm speaking to one of my great friends and HIV supporters and advocates, Ian Watkins, aka H from Steps, the one and only.
You forgot to mention mentor, because I am your Steps mentor.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that because then you're not doing a very good job if you're my mentor, because I'm not very good.
But you know what? You can't shine shit, God. Just say.
But you can put it under a light. You can put it under a light.
You could roll it in glitter, boy.
Exactly, my love. Exactly. Right, let's get to the topic on hand. HIV. Now, you come from a very similar background to me, same upbringing, same kind of area. What was your memories growing up of first ever hearing about HIV, or as I suppose we knew it then, more AIDS?
I just remember my earliest recollection of HIV and AIDS were those dreadful scaremongering adverts on TV. I remember they were filmed in a really dark way, and there was smoke, and there was this awful music, and there were tombstones.
Yeah.
I knew from a very early age that I was gay. And I remember around about this time, I had kissed one of my school friends, a guy. And because there was no sex education or no awareness of same-sex relationships back then that was taught in schools, I saw these adverts and I thought I had AIDS.
All right.
So it really hit home to me how personal that was. Of course, that wasn't the case. But I just remember those adverts scared the death out of people, and especially me as a young boy as well.
Yeah. So do you think, as much as that advert at that time, I suppose, was needed because there was kind of a pandemic that people weren't sure of, so it was kind of promoting the understanding of HIV. But you also think that advert gave a certain amount of information, but not enough information?
I guess at the time, though, Gar, it was a relatively unknown disease. So the government took it upon themselves to scare people into not having sex. But also at the time, I was very aware that they placed the blame on the gay community, and that was completely unfair.
So do you think, though, even now we are, 30, 40, even maybe years on from that advert, making us both feel very, very old. That advert, because of its impact, because of its power, still lives not only in our memories because we saw it, but also it's kind of been passed along in generations. So, heterosexual male and females who saw it at the time as well were that ingrained or feared by it that maybe they pass that on to their children, who are now passing it on to their children, because there's not that much education still around about HIV and living with it. So do you think that advert itself has a lot to play still in the stigma and the misunderstanding around HIV in 2021?
Totally. I mean, there is massive misunderstanding still because of those adverts. But times have changed, as we know, and HIV and AIDS is not the death sentence that it was many years ago. We know, and that you can take one pill a day and live a happy and healthy life. But I think up until recently, until you told me your truth, then I've done a bit more research because I wanted to support you and be there for you. So I guess if you weren't in my life, then I wouldn't have felt the need to have that armor and have that protection to defend you. But in turn, it's educated me, and I can educate my friends, and I can educate my children. So, you can pass the baton on and on and on.
Yeah. What misunderstandings? I think it's really important to understand that everybody from every community has a misunderstanding about it. We don't all need to know about it. I think just from the point you said is you got to learn about it because somebody close to you was affected by it. So what misunderstandings did you have maybe around HIV prior to me telling you about my diagnosis? And again, and double loaded question, what do you think are the misunderstandings that so many people who have not been affected by HIV have around the subject of HIV?
Because of my awareness of HIV and AIDS now, and because I'm one of your besties, I took it upon myself to educate myself. And I know that through sexual contact, undetectable means untransmittable. So I knew that I was absolutely safe and in no danger at all.
Yeah, you're exactly right in what you're saying. U equals U means that HIV cannot be transmitted through sexual contact. How did that make you feel then when you found that out? Is that something that, because I believe for somebody who lives with HIV, as speaking to somebody who's not living with HIV, I believe that regardless of whether you're living with or not, that's a message that should be celebrated. Surely that's a modern day scientific achievement that should be put out there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, morally, ethically, medically, we should be flying all of those flags. I consider myself, obviously I'm part of the LGBTQI plus community, but I hope that I'm an advocate and an ally for HIV positive people. And I fly that flag so high. I try to, and that's why I educate myself now, like I said, to pass on the baton to all of my friends.
Yeah. What about with you saying you had the misunderstanding you had, right? Say within your family, your friends, when you was maybe educating other people, did you find out that actually this is something that a lot of people don't know, or that there was a lot more that they didn't know that you already had the knowledge of to be able to tell them? Because it just seems like it's a subject that has moved on so far, yet so many people have not learned about this.
I think we as a community we are at a crossroads right now. We are celebrating humanity within the LGBTQI plus community, and people outside of our umbrella are bombarded with so many different aspects. So there's sexuality, there's gender, there's HIV. So I think it's a lot for people to take on. So you just have to educate or drip feed certain amounts of information, because my parents are still, they don't really understand, cisgender and, non-binary, how you identify. But I'm bringing my children up in a completely different way. If Max wants to wear a dress one day, he can. If Cubby wants to push his cars around in a pushchair, he can. And one of them came home from school the other day and said, girls wear pink. And I went, well, boys can wear pink as well. So the next day, I dressed from head to toe in pink to take them to school just to prove a point. So I'll digress. My point is so much information that we are trying to, not forced on people's necks, but I don't want to be evangelical about it. There is still so much to do, but it's the way we approach it and the way we educate people as well.
Yeah. Do you think though, when it comes to HIV, there's this, as somebody who is such a great advocate and supporter of people living with HIV and also the LGBTQ plus community, as you mentioned, right? Do you think though that this is something that we feel as society we only need to know if we are part of the LGBTQ plus community, or if we are maybe part of the Black African community, because we all have this assumption that those are the only characteristics of people that are ever going to be affected by HIV, and the facts and the proof are that is completely not that. So do you feel that sometimes as society, this is something we do all need to know, because this is something that can actually affect us? Yes, disproportionately affects the LGBTQ plus community, but can affect everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all human and we can all be affected by this, but I do still think there is this stigma attached that this disease mainly lives and thrives within the LGBTQI plus community. That's a hard one for it to cross over, and the awareness to, I think we have to start in schools to start. I mean, I'm in a very, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm in a very privileged position, but I'm also in a minority. Whereas the school that my children go to, I am one of the only gay parents there. So I'm already having conversations with the school and the head teacher about awareness and education about same-sex families, about gender identity. And the area that I live in, I hope will be very susceptible to that and progressive. But I do think it has to start in school. Education has to start in school. I mean, sex education was optional. Gay sex education was optional. You could take your children out of school if you agreed with that talk. But now the government has made that compulsory, so everybody has that talk. And I do think this has to be talked about in school at the same time.
So when you say, and I didn't learn about it in school, and I think this is a good conversation to have for people to hear. Like, how did you feel? I know exactly how you reacted because I was there, obviously. But how did you feel when I sat you down that day in Costa and told you I was living with HIV? Because if I'm right, up until that point, there wasn't that much learnings by either of us, really. So how did that make you feel? Like, and at that point, we were really good friends. But I think from that further on, we become better friends. But how did you feel at that moment?
I just wanted to be there for you in every way I could. And that's why I took it upon myself to educate and inform myself. I know that wasn't an easy thing for you to tell anybody. And you wouldn't have told many people at that point. I think I was probably one of the first.
Yeah.
But I know that you can trust me, and that's why you told me. And I would not have judged. I would be there to completely support you. And I'm still supporting you. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm asking these questions. I think for me, these are important questions for you to answer, for other people to hear. I'm very close to both of your children, Cubby and Max, or I believe I am. Like, I enjoy their company. I love coming around the house.
Relatable, I mean.
They think I'm a crazy, crazy man. But was there any doubt in thinking, okay, maybe our relationship has to change? Maybe you can't come to the house. Maybe you can't be around my children for fear of maybe things I didn't know or things you didn't know about how the virus could be or couldn't be transmitted.
Absolutely not. I mean, I had enough awareness and education and know-how to know that you are a human and you are living with something that's controllable. So there was no doubt in my mind. I mean, absolutely. But maybe outside of our umbrella, people don't know that. And that's where the problem lies. That's where the education needs to come in.
Yeah. When it comes to education, I feel like this year especially, HIV AIDS has become very much a talking point through organizations like this with Tackle HIV, Terence Higgins Trust, but through It's a Sin, the program on Channel 4. Written by Russell T. Davis, who's also done stuff with us. Do you think that program itself kind of relaunched the conversation of HIV back into the mainstream? Like, it brought it back as a conversation for people to have rather than for people to avoid?
Very much so. I mean, I have a weekly radio show, and you came on that week that the series was on, just to discuss, so it creates awareness, it brings things back into the forefront, and it started conversations. And I know that the stats with the Terence Higgins Trust and the HIV tests orders they soared. It was just incredible, the amount of awareness that TV show brought. I loved the actors in it. I know some of the actors in it, and they are still advocates. Nathaniel is living with HIV as well. And so, he was living his truth on camera. So it was an incredible, it was a landmark production.
Do you think, though, things like this are created, they brought into the conversation, but it's really important and really relevant that we keep the conversation? Because I feel, when we look back to them moments, say 30, 40 years ago, when it was brought in, and the Grim Reaper and the Tombstone and the gay plague, and nothing was ever said about it since, it kind of dies a death. So do you think it's really important that we keep the conversation, we continue it?
Totally. And that's what we're doing now. I mean, the aftermath of that TV series and the impact has just been incredible. You know, conversations have started, HIV tests have soared through the roof. Ollie Alexander is another incredible ally, and his work with Elton John AIDS Foundation, you know, they had the #1 record, donate all of the proceeds to the AIDS Foundation. So the awareness is just incredible, and it's up to people like us to keep that alive.
I know how I do it with the Tackle HIV, with the campaign. And I know you're a massive supporter of the campaign, massive supporter of me, massive supporter of Terence Higgins Trust. But maybe everyday life, like how do people as allies kind of keep the conversation going in everyday life? Because it's a difficult conversation. You know, you're a parent. You take the kids to school. It's not kind of, maybe it is, maybe it isn't something you have a conversation with at the school gates, or you know, when you do ladies at lunch, like I know you do because you love it. So how do you feel about being an ally, as in, you know, starting the conversation, or how does a good ally remain a good ally, like constantly keeping that conversation going?
Well, Guy, it's a difficult one to kind of drop into conversation at the school gate, you know, by the way. But I try and use my platform to be informative. And when I watched It's a Sin and I wanted to keep the awareness going, it hit me really hard, that TV show. And as a gay man, it became such a personal journey for me, because I wanted to create awareness and I wanted to support you. But also I wanted to be very visual. So what I did, I ordered a HIV test, and I actually did that. And I did Instagram stories, how easy it was. I did a test, you know, live on Instagram. So, and I posted that just to show that it's as easy as ABC. You can actually just take a test and know your status and know that you're safe. So I think there are different ways in which we can educate and inform, not just drop it into conversation at 9 in the morning.